Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to biology class, and today our topic is topic 6, water vapor loss in leaf surfaces. Before we get into this, let's do a summary of our previous lesson. So last time we talked about how guard cells open and close, and we first mentioned about the main function of guard cells. So there are two functions of guard cells. The first one is to control the size of the stomata. And secondly is to carry out photosynthesis. So how do they open and close? We can pretty much divide this in terms of the time of the day. So during the day, photosynthesis occurs, and that's when sugar is produced. So when sugar is produced, this lowers water potential of guard cells. So what happens now is that water will enter the guard cells from the surrounding lower epidermal cells, which have higher water potential. And this is carried out by the process osmosis. So as water enters the guard cells would expand and become more turgid. So being turgid means that they gain in size. And when they do this, because of the differences in the thickness of their cellulose wall, they would actually curve up even more, therefore making the stomata pore open. However, during nighttime, there is no light, so photosynthesis stops, and this is when sugars are mainly used up for respiration. So when you have less sugar in the cytoplasm and the vacuole, this increases water potential of the guard cells. So as water potential increases and the lower epidermal cells would have lower water potential, therefore water will then exit guard cells by osmosis. Guard cells will then lose their turgidity because they lose water, and hence, at the end, that is how stomata pore closes. Alright, so finally we're getting into our learning objective. So today's learning objective, we're going to cover 6 part C, but we're only going to do this first part right here, which is how water vapor loss is related to cell surfaces, air spaces, and the stomata. Okay, so what is our step to success today? Firstly, we have to state what happens at the cell surfaces. Secondly, state that water vapor is found in the intercellular airspace. Thirdly, state how water vapor moves out through the stomata. So this is basically what we are going to talk about today. How water vapor is lost from the leaves, and we have to relate this to the cell surfaces, the air spaces, and also the stomata. So let's do a review of the transverse section of the leaf, and how do we relate this kind of more realistic picture right here, which is actually a real picture, compare it to a diagram. So out at this part right here, so we can see that it's highlighted where you can see a lot of spongy mesophyll layer. So this part is referring to this part of the drawing or the diagram. So this is referring to the inside part of the leaf. So it is inside the leaf itself. And this part right here is referring to the bottom part, which is covering slightly over there the lower epidermal cells, which includes the guard cells. And as you can see that the top and the bottom here, that is atmosphere, aka the atmospheric air. So whatever air spaces you can find which is inside the cell is called the intercellular air spaces. So those are the spaces that are over here. Okay, now that we have straightened that up, let's get into the theory. So what happens first is that water film would evaporate to form water vapor. So what we mean over here is basically, so you have your water film or film of moisture, layer of moisture that actually surrounds the spongy mesophyll cells. They also surround the palisade. However, in this picture, this diagram, this video, we are only looking at the spongy mesophyll. So this is water film, which is literally liquid water, and because there is air spaces right here inside the leaf itself, water can actually evaporate And if you guys can remember, the definition of evaporation is just the change of state of water from liquid to gas. And the gas form of water is water vapor. So as the water film evaporates to form water vapor, it will now enter the intercellular air spaces. That is where the gases can be found. All right, so now there is greater concentration of water vapor inside the intercellular air space because of that evaporation of water. Therefore, we say humidity inside the leaf has now greatly increased. So if you want to know, humidity just basically means the concentration of water vapor that you can find in air. And in here, because of that evaporation of the water film, humidity will be pretty much higher inside the cell rather than outside the atmosphere. So what happens next is that since there's higher concentration of water vapor inside the leaf compared to the outside atmospheric air, water vapor will then diffuse out of the leaf down a concentration gradient. So there is this difference in concentration gradient. So obviously we're going to have water vapor moving from an area or a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration, which is in the atmosphere. Oopsie, so that should be 5 and 6. Okay, so as the water vapor escapes the leaf through the stomata, so what happens is that the water vapor can only escape and exit because there is this pore. Otherwise, they're all blocked, and there is also the waxy cuticle that prevents water from entering or exiting, actually. So the only way that water vapor from inside here can exit is through that pore that is called the stoma or stomata for many of these pores that are only made by the guard cells. So in the end, once water vapor escapes through the stomata, water vapor is then lost into the atmosphere. That means that a leaf now has lost water. And when they lose water, they also need to replace that. That is where we get that transpiration pull. All right, so actually that is the end of our first part of the learning objective. So the first step to success, if you remember, is to state what happens at the cell surfaces. So at the cell surfaces, evaporation of water film happens, and this is the change of state from liquid to gas. Sorry, that's FROM, from water, liquid water to gas, which is water vapor. Okay, so our second learning objective is to state that water vapor is found in the intercellular airspace. So how do we pretty much explain this? We can say that water vapor evaporates. So once water vapor evaporates, water evaporates into water vapor, it actually enters the intercellular airspace, so which is this part right here. Okay, lastly, state how water vapor moves out through the stomata. Okay, so water vapor diffuses down a concentration gradient from the intercellular airspace, and they would exit through the stomata only because that is the only exit point that they have. And then water vapor is lost. They are lost from the leaves into the atmosphere. That means that they are not in the leaves anymore. So that is our learning objective 6C. Describe how water vapor is related to the cell surfaces, aka that water film, and the air spaces, how it enters through the air spaces, and finally exiting through the stomata. So this is a very quick lesson, and I hope that helps you. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I'll try to answer your questions. Bye. Have a good day.